supports you and your policies, praises you for defending religious freedom.
Yeah.
He now says you owe Pope Leo an apology. Will you apologize?
No, I don't, because Pope Leo said things that are wrong. He was very much against what I'm doing with regard to Iran, and you cannot have a nuclear Iran. Pope Leo would not be happy with the end result. You have hundreds of millions of people dead, and it's not going to happen. So I can't. I think he's very weak on crime.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
Now, keep in mind, this is the same person that MAGA would have you believe was anointed by Jesus to come and save the United States. Openly involved in a verbal spat with, let me check, the Pope.
Why did you attack Pope Leo on Truth Social?
I don't think he's doing a very good job. He likes crime, I guess. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo. He's a very liberal person, and he's a man that doesn't believe in stopping crime. He's a man that doesn't think that we should be toying with a country that wants a nuclear weapon so they can blow up the world. I'm not a fan of Pope Leo.
Basically, he said that the message of the church, my message, the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers.
Today, the conflict between Donald Trump and the Pope seemed to escalate after Donald Trump last night told reporters that the Pope was weak and terrible on foreign policy. I'm not sure that that comes up on the requirements for being Pope, but then again, what do I know? And Pope Leo responded by doubling down, saying, quote, "I will continue to speak out loudly against war," before clarifying that he had, quote, "no fear after the president's attack."
I have no fear, neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel. And that's what I believe. I am called to do what the church is called to do. We're not politicians. We're not looking to make foreign policy, as he calls it, with the same perspective that he might understand it. But I do believe that the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers, is a message that the world needs to hear today. Basically, he said that the message of the church, my message, the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers. I do not look at my role as being political or politician. I don't want to get into a debate with him. I don't think that the message of the gospel is meant to be abused in the way that some people are doing. And I will continue to speak out loudly against war, looking to promote peace, promoting dialogue and multilateral relationships among the states, to look for just solutions to problems. Too many people are suffering in the world today. Too many innocent people are being killed. And I think someone has to stand up and say, there's a better way to do this. Thank you very much.
Now let's pause for a second to go back to a segment I like to call Imagine If Obama or Biden had done this. The President of the United States accused the Pope of siding with the, quote, radical left, before then posting an AI-generated image of himself as a Christ-like figure performing a healing.
And not just some, a number of his own supporters were really upset about this post, saying that it was blasphemous, saying that he was idolizing himself, that this was not something that you joked around about, interpreting yourself as Jesus Christ. President Trump, of course, saying that he thought he was just being a doctor and helping people. But of course, if you look at the hands in that photo, you see that these are, seem to be some kind of divine hands that are doing their own healing, and also the timing of all this, because it's coming at a time where President Trump has been in a tit-for-tat back and forth with Pope Leo, particularly over the war in Iran. Pope Leo has become more outspoken, particularly about President Trump's rhetoric when he said that he was going to essentially extinguish an entire civilization, and President Trump has been lashing out at the Pope before he posted this image of himself as a Christ-like figure.
And this is where the contradiction becomes unavoidable, right? You'll find his supporters discussing his want to defend Christianity. This is the same man who could not quote a single Bible passage when asked about it.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book. And you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what one or two of your most favorite Bible verses are, and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it, because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal. So I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like?
I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's just an incredible, the whole Bible is an incredible. I joke very much so. They always hold up The Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time.
Now listen, it's not unfamiliar territory that a pope would come out and speak to political matters, but it is a anomaly when it resorts to some sort of personal attacks between a pope and said leader. But as we know, nobody is off limits when it comes to Donald Trump.
He, of course, has said, as you just heard, he thought this was him being, depicted as a doctor. Not everyone sees that as a doctor. What do you make of this, both this image and the backlash to it in this moment?
Yeah, I don't know too many doctors that have glowing hands. So that's the most Jesus-looking picture I think I could imagine. And I think it was pretty shocking to me that someone would put themselves in the place of Jesus. And as your reporter was just saying, it came after he had just been tweeting out a pretty hateful attack on Pope Leo. So obviously religion was on his mind last night. And that probably came from watching the 60 Minutes special with the three cardinals. So I guess he was, thinking about religion, and that's what came out.
So what we are seeing here with how Donald Trump is responding to the Pope coincides with his media strategy at the moment. He's snapping at reporters when they dare ask questions about the status of this ongoing conflict, which if you were to watch this interview with none other than Fox News' Maria Bartiromo, it doesn't exactly sound like Trump himself is confident of things going forward, nor can he tell the American people that gas prices will go down.
President, because you referred to a post that hundreds of super tankers are headed to the Gulf of America to buy oil and gas from the U.S. What can you tell us about that, sir?
Well, I can tell you that it used to be called the Gulf of Mexico. That's what I can tell you. Now it's called the Gulf of America because of me. One of my little things that I did, one of my little sidelines. And it's a great honor. People are so happy. You go to Louisiana, you go to Florida, you go to these states, Texas. They're so honored by it. I used to say, why is that the Gulf of Mexico when we have 93% of the frontage? And, it fronts 93% on the United States. I said, I think I'm going to change it to the Gulf of America. What a beautiful name. And I did. And I give a lot of credit to Google because once I filed the papers, I did it. And Google Map, once Google Map changed, did it, it was a done deal. But we had lawsuits, we won everything. And it's now the Gulf of America, which I'm very honored by.
But do you expect super
I must tell you, I was thinking about calling it the Gulf of Trump. And I decided not to do it. I think maybe it was a wise. But under Biden, who was an incompetent president, he was grossly incompetent. Look, the election was rigged. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that now. And it's all come out, and it's coming out. But under Biden, if you take a look at what happened, when he was president, that's a war that would have never happened. Russia attacking Ukraine.
Yep.
And I ended 8 wars, including Pakistan.
So do you believe the price of oil and gas will be lower before the midterm elections?
I hope so. I mean, I think so. It could be, or the same, or maybe a little bit higher, but it should be around the same. I think this won't be that much longer. They're wiped out, man. They're wiped out. And you don't get a fair shake. We need a free and fair press in this country. And I don't even know why people would do that. Why would they say how wonderful they're doing militarily? They're doing so well. The country is wiped out.
The man who consistently projects strength seems to be lacking the confidence to discuss fully what is going on with this conflict in the Middle East. But rest assured, he will be happy to attend a UFC event in order to give off the image that he's still being received well across the country when the polls and even the response in local elections beg to differ.
All right, you mentioned the president. His approval, overall, 43%. Disapprove 57%. On healthcare, it's 38%, 61% disapprove. A lot of Republicans looking at these numbers going, the midterms right around the corner. Do you look at approval? Are you looking at how the public is perceiving some of these actions?
The president saved Medicaid. But more breaking news that we are following tonight. President Trump is now just hours away from addressing the nation about this ongoing war with Iran. Ahead of the speech, we have new CNN polling that is debuting right now, showing how the country feels about this war. Now, just a third of Americans approve of how the president is handling his role of commander-in-chief as well as the war. 2/3 disapprove of the decision to take military action in Iran, and strong opposition has grown 12 points since the start of the war. 63% of Americans say that they believe it's likely that the war will turn into a long-term military conflict, and nearly 7 in 10 oppose sending U.S. ground troops into Iran. That is something that the president and the administration have repeatedly refused to rule out. 71% say they don't want Congress to authorize $200 billion for further military action in Iran.
The president is growing increasingly unpopular, and something tells me that attacking the Pope won't exactly boost his approval rating either.
And it is this remarkable back and forth we want to talk about still more this morning that we've really never seen before. The president versus the Pope. Pope Leo is responding today to President Trump's extraordinary attack on him. Here's a quote from President Trump just yesterday, calling Pope Leo, quote, weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. The Pope, traveling today, responded, speaking to reporters.
I have no fear of neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel. And that's what I believe. I am called to know what the church is called to do. We're not politicians. We're not looking to make foreign policies with the same perspective that we might understand it. But I do believe in the message of the gospel. Blessed are the peacemakers. It's the message of the Lord. Thank you very much for clarifying.
Blessed are the peacemakers is the Pope's message right now. Joining us right now.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.